next week, right? So I have to buy you guys lunch. I got to buy lunch again? Could have brought some food, Tad.
All right, Calvin.
Tad slipping. Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News. I have a question for each of you. First for Brian. The process to hiring Christian was a little different from when you hired the previous coordinator. Why the change? Why it was so extensive this go around?
Well, I think obviously we wanted to get it right. We're excited about the process and how it worked out. I think, when you look at what we did last year on offense, we went through a very thorough process and came away with a bunch of guys that I really hadn't worked with, had been known about them for a while. But I think this was really just something where we were excited to say, hey, take a deep breath, let's get it right. I think we did over 40 total interviews, 9 of which were coordinators. He was the last one, by the way. He was the last Zoom that we did. And every impression we had with CP was just left us wanting more. The conviction that he has, but curious, his calm demeanor, you guys will get to know him. Just the way he carries himself is awesome. But really the process was thorough. It was long. Jerry and Steven, I think, they hung with me, which is great. We did so many layers of this thing, man. I mean, we got into concepts and techniques at every level. To hear Jerry talk about playing 4-eye was really cool for me. He's going back to Arkansas now. So, I don't think they called the 4 eyes back then. But when we got into the weeds, man, and just every time we spent time with CP, it became very clear that he was the guy for the job.
This is for Christian. Obviously, everyone wants to know, what kind of defense do you want to bring to the Cowboys?
Well, the first thing is we're going to be multiple. I think that whenever you form a defensive structure, it's about the players that you have. So core principles, we'll be a 3-4 by nature, but, 4-3 spacing will be appropriate, 4-2-5 in nickel, different front structures, coverages behind it. But I would say being multiple is probably the most important thing about it.
Clarence Hill, DLLS Cowboys. First, Shotty, talked about the trust that Jerry and those guys showed in you to lead the process.
Well, again, I think, Jerry and Steve and I, grew very close over the years. Just we had real conversations, as you know, Clarence, and spent a lot of time together. But we did this together, and it was awesome, and the process was awesome. And I'm not being funny when I say, to get, Jerry to be willing to sit in on 40-something interviews, was extremely – I was stoked. I was so excited that he wanted to dive deep into the weeds with us and go into the fundamentals and the techniques and all those things we talked about. And, we stayed in constant communication. And that's how you feel great about it. And like I said, like we told all the candidates when they came in, for us, we felt like last year we were able to build a program on offense. And we wanted to build a program on defense where you're self-sustaining. You've got great coaches, and when we win, which we're going to win, and we're going to compete for Super Bowls, people come after your staffs. You look at what Seattle and some of those teams are dealing with right now, and you want to have the infrastructure and the people underneath to where, you promote from within more times than not. And so it was a great process, and they were in it along the way, along with a few other guys. And I believe in the process. I'm a process guy, and I think we hit a home run with this guy.
Yeah, it seemed like you were barking up the right tree. All the guys that got second interviews got jobs, and everybody loved him in their respective cities. But what stood out about CP that put him at the top of the list?
Again, the way he carries himself. He's wise beyond his years. I mean this. He's convicted. I did tell him that I was a coordinator at 32 years old. He's 34, so he's been slacking. I'm a little disappointed that I had to beat him by 2 years. But I say that in jest because he's been preparing for this for the last 4 or 5 years. When you're designing defense, you're the pass game coordinator on defense. You're basically involved in calling third downs and giving those things. And I say it because it's real. He was the last Zoom that we did, and as he started talking, it wasn't just him talking about his watches and his shoe game. He got a serious shoe game. Yeah, he got a shoe room. You guys can write about that. He's got a shoe room. Man, every time we talk, we just would get off a call or get off the Zoom and get off the interview, just be like, damn, I want want more of that. And I think his ability to develop players is very obvious. You look at what he did in Denver, involved with Surtain, and you look at what they did in Philadelphia, obviously with Cooper DeJean and Mitchell and guys like that. He's done it. And, ton of respect for Vic Fangio. He's cut his, teeth under Vic, but he's not Vic. He's got his own convictions and beliefs, and that's what I love about the guy.
Real quickly, congratulations.
Thank you.
What stood about the Cowboys for you, and why did you want this job?
I think when we initially started the process, you could tell there was an aligned vision for what they wanted in the position, where we wanted to go forward. Obviously, a great deal of respect for not only the organization, but the players involved on the team, having been in division for the past 2 years and having different times going against them. Significant offensive firepower, stayed up a lot of late nights trying to prepare for. So it always helps when you have a franchise quarterback and offensive skill players on that side of the ball that can control the game for you. But I think the biggest thing was just the alignment. You could feel from everybody in the building during those interactions that there was a shared vision involved and people wanted to move forward in the right direction.
Christian, Todd Archer with ESPN. How ready are you for this?
I'm ready.
Where does the confidence come from that you know you're ready to handle it?
I think confidence comes from preparation, and I think that I've been able to learn from the right people. So I think that when you've been involved with different people along my journey that I've learned under as head coaches and defensive coordinators, number one, and then the diversity of scheme that I've been involved with, and then you kind of become accustomed to what you're comfortable with in your own ideas. You like certain things, you don't like certain things, what will work, what won't work. I think as you kind of get involved with different people, you kind of form your own identity. So when you have that opportunity, you know what you want to do. And I've kind of gone through that process internally for a great deal of my career. So I've prepared as much as I possibly can at this moment.
And obviously it wasn't a good year for the Cowboys defensively last year and what they did, but your thoughts on what is in-house here and how you can improve the guys that are already here as opposed to waiting for what happens in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, the game is definitely won and lost up front. We have significant players in the front seven. And so I think that when you start with that defensive line room and what you're able to do in controlling the pocket, stopping the run, you control what an offense is able to do, and you're able to dictate to them on their terms. So you're not playing the whole playbook when you win first and second down. So I think it starts there. That's where the excitement starts. And there's several other pieces that have been proven playmakers. We look forward to kind of bringing it all together in the next couple months.
John Machota with The Athletic. Obviously, a big part of your job is teaching. What do you think makes a good teacher?
I think you have to know the student first and foremost. You have to know who you're talking to. What might hit one player's brain is going to hit different than another. So being thorough and being detailed, being very clear and concise in terms of your messaging and when to correct, when not to correct. Sometimes players got to touch the stove. You just want to do it in a controlled environment. But just how to do that, the diversity of teaching, whether it's on the field, in the meeting room, Kahoot quizzes, physical quizzes, showing them video examples, having them teach in front of a room. There's so many different ways that you can kind of get in the weeds of teaching, scheme, technique, situational awareness, and really you just want to expose players to as many different examples because it's going to hit everybody differently in terms of how they're able to learn that.
And I don't know, it might be for both of you, but as you were filling out the defensive staff, how important was that when you were interviewing candidates, the teaching aspect of it?
Well, I'll take it first. I think, I was impressed with Christian, obviously, through the whole process, but impressed me even more was when I saw him interacting through this process of going through the interviews for the position jobs, right? Like there was an alignment he and I had talked about before we offered them the job about, okay, well, let's talk about some things because obviously there's a very competitive field when you're trying to build a staff and there's good coaches out there. There's good coaches in different realms, but seeing him through the interview process, John, got me really excited about him as a leader. Him being, very comfortable having the hard conversations. That's what I am. I'm a person who loves to have hard conversations. And again, the reason we wanted to talk before we decided to do this partnership was to make sure we could have those hard conversations. And so I think that's something from the very beginning that I felt great about. Anything with staff?
No, I think that we, extensive search, very thorough, trying to just balance it. I think, compatibility is very important. And obviously the teaching element is significant, right? But you want to have the right collection of people by position, whether it's, what schemes they've been in previously, what they've done, their area of focus and expertise when it comes to game planning and all that kind of stuff with player development. And we definitely feel like we have the right mix.
Is the interview process the first time you guys have ever met?
No, we met when we had joint practice when I was in Denver in 2022. There was like a little coaches mixer at Ocean Prime out there in the Denver Tech area. We met real quick.
See how smart he is? I wouldn't remember that.
Yeah, we met real quick.
I was consulting.
But that was just quick handshake introduction. There was a bunch of other people around during that time, but actually having, conversation and talking football and everything else, this process was the first time.
And you guys know this with me, like this is a name that I've had in my notebook for the last couple of years. People just kept talking about this guy from Denver and Green Bay originally, but Denver and then in Philadelphia, and so he was a name that I'd been, hearing a lot about for a long time, no different than Clayton Adams, in terms of, hey, if you ever get a shot, these would be names that you would be intelligent and smart to talk to.
Yeah. Hey, Christian. Nick Harris, Forward Star Telegram. Congratulations. Obviously, your experience is pretty deep. Brian had mentioned Vic Fangio, but also Vance Joseph, even Mike Elko. How do you see those guys playing into you building this scheme and call sheet for the first time in your career? And then where do you see your little nuances coming into play as well?
Yeah, a lot of them have a lot of similarities but differences. I think foundationally, Vic, Vance, Mike Pettin, Coach Elko, Gerald Evero all came out of a 3-4 structure. I think that once you get past that, from the fronts you build and the coverages you do and the personality on third down, red zone, you definitely have a mentality as a play caller, but I think that it's still going to be designed around the players that you have. So there's different nuances that I've taken from each one of them. And even people outside of that, as I've had extensive studies and you build relationships outside of the circle you've been in that you want to incorporate with what you want to do.
And then are you more of a guy that falls under the line of thinking of building a scheme around the players or acquiring players to fit the scheme?
I think you build it around the players. Of course, you want to have your core principles and foundational beliefs, but as you kind of move forward in the process, what do your guys do well? How can you put good players in highlighted positions? How can you create one-on-ones for certain guys? How you can protect certain guys? If we can win on blitzes on a running back, then we're going to blitz a lot. If we got good man-to-man corners, we're going to play man. If we have guys that are better with zone vision, we're going to play more zone. So, you want to build a package that has diversity and scheme, and then you want to, tailor it to the players that you have. And, of course, there are schematic fits, but I think the really good players are the ones that you can't peg them in a certain scheme, and that's the only way they can play football. You want to have guys that no matter what scheme they're in, they can be significant contributors, and then you want to just highlight it around their strengths.
You mentioned those core beliefs, philosophies. What are those for you, one or two?
Yeah, I think, definitely want to, stop the run and affecting the quarterback, I think, are the two most important things you can do. You affect the quarterback by stopping the run. Sometimes affecting the quarterback comes through pressure. Sometimes it comes through disguise. Sometimes it comes through just the talent that you're able to have and the ability to play, the play style. But I think those two things are where it starts. Because if you can stop the run, you can get teams in predictable downs on second, get back on track, and then third and longs, then you have more schematic versatility. If we're playing a whole bunch of 3rd and 2s and 3rd and 3s, usually those aren't the defenses that are successful. But if you can win first down and you're strong in the fundamentals, we're getting off blocks, we're tackling, we're attacking the football, we're situationally aware, those are the ones that are successful.
Tom.
Tommy Yarst, DallasCowboys.com. Hey, Christian. Just overall, in your past, you've had a strong track record with corners and developing them. What do you make of some of the guys that you've got now here in Dallas, like a Savon Rebel or a Deron Bland? And what do you see their next steps being under your vision?
They have different strengths. Definitely evaluated Rebel last year in the draft process. Had one of his teammates at Denver, Jaquan McMillan from ECU, so kind of had a little bit of intel there. But his ability to erase receivers in press coverage, he's very aggressive in run support, and he has the long speed and athletic traits that you want at the position. Obviously, coming off the injury, getting him healthy is a significant part of that, and him having the confidence to do so. And then Bland, he's instinctive and he takes the ball away at a high rate. You saw that from Sac State to Fresno to now here. So very excited to work with those guys.
And then now that you're the coordinator, not as much time to spend with the defensive backs, how do you plan to manage your time so that you can still keep developing defensive backs like you have in the past and also manage all the units on your defense?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with the coaches that we hired. Have a lot of confidence in Derek Ansley, Ryan Smith, and Rob Muschamp in the secondary to drive the bus when it comes to that and the development. Obviously, my eyes are naturally going to start there when it comes to it, and I'm going to have to like fight the magnetic force during individual periods that's going to draw me to the DVs and go somewhere else. But have a lot of confidence in those guys to teach and develop those players, and we're excited about that.
Jane.
Jane Slater, NFL Network. Coach, do you think last year your team had a defensive identity? And if it didn't, what did you want it to be at the end of the season?
Yeah, again, I think, talking to the players, I think they did feel that way a little bit. And I think, there was a change that was made, and the change was made when we got Quinnen. And all of a sudden the 5 down becomes real, and so you start making those adjustments. The biggest thing I would say, Jane, though, was it was more about the identity moving forward. And that's why the process was so long. That's why it was so many Zooms and so many interviews. And you get the coordinator, you're not done. Because, again, Christian's a great coach. But, again, you got to have the position rooms, managed the same way. What's been awesome for me, Jane, has been the excitement of our players. Our players are around a little bit, whether they're just hanging around, but they're coming to see him and be around. You see the excitement for Christian and the other staff and the connection that's already started. And so for me, that gets me excited because, again, that's what you want. You want these guys to be excited about not only what Christian, but Marcus Dixon, Scott Simons are all going to bring to this defense. And there will be an identity and there will be a philosophy. And I think that we've done the first part, but there's still a lot of work left.
My next one's for Christian. One thing we got to know with Shotty last year was his why. What was your why when you got into coaching?
I think that I had a lot of coaches over the course of my life that really helped develop me outside of my parents. The discipline, the confidence factor, the team element of it. I think, I'm the oldest of 3 boys, so, being a big brother, there's an element of that in the coaching side too, in terms of the relationships that you build and how you try to help them learn from their own mistakes, but also like not letting them fall under the same things that you might have encountered. And I think just passion for the game. I love football. I love everything it brings, game day practice, the late nights watching film, all that stuff. And then you kind of find this happy medium, and it never feels like work.
Scholar.
Skyler Nixon with the AP. Christian, welcome. Cooper and Gene had some high praise for you on social media when the news broke. And Shotty mentioned the development of him and Quinyon Mitchell. I just wondered, from your point of view, how much do you think the development of those 2 guys and maybe some others sort of led to this opportunity?
I think, great players make great coaches. So, when you're around talented individuals that love the game like you do and they're willing to put in that work, there's definitely a happy marriage there when it comes to player development. They challenge you as a coach. There's been plenty of players that you learn from them, whether it's how you taught them or things they might have done at a different stop or how they see the game between the lines. So I think it's definitely some give and take there when it comes to that. But I was definitely blessed to have coached some of the guys in my past.
Did you watch the NFC East Hard Knocks at all?
No.
Okay. I'm just curious if you would see kind of inside this building. I know you don't get to see deep inside of the building and that, but
I avoided. I didn't want to watch that stuff. No.
Ask him about The Gambler. Does he watch The Gambler?
I did.
Yeah, he did watch The Gambler. Smart man.
Yeah, so I did.
Give me the Cliff Notes.
That was kind of my, I kind of put I was snowed in Philly and, accepted the job. I was there, couldn't get really out. And we were just, doing Zoom interviews all day and stuff. And I started watching a couple of those episodes to try to educate myself a little bit. So, yeah, that was good.
give us any insight into the Philly-Dallas hate. Philly hate for Dallas?
It's real. Yeah, it's real. I think it's mutual too. So, yeah, it's real. I think all division rivalries are a great part of the game and why you do it. That's what makes it special when you have those rivalries, and that usually means you're playing for something. You don't have rivalries if you're a bad team. You have rivalries when you have significant opponents and those games are high leverage situations, and that's when the best players show up.
Garrett.
Garrett Podell, CBS Sports. Christian Bryan talked about using 5 down fronts to get guys like Quinnen Williams, Osa Digizua, and Kenny Clark all on the field. What is your thought on kind of making sure 3 highly paid interior defensive players get, commensurate play time given their money?
Yeah, I think you have different ways of doing that. 5 down is one of them. There's some different 4 down structures you can do that with as well. There's 6 down presentations you can do that with as well. So, like I said earlier, the defensive line and winning the game up front is significant. So how we can change the math and get our best players on the field will always be a part of what we do.
Brian, I know you've talked about here when it comes to player acquisition and things like that. Obviously, Jerry runs the show for that. But what have your talks been with him about in terms of rebuilding the defense, the resources the team can maybe look to committing for that in free agency?
Yeah, I think it's really just getting started, Garrett. I think you come out of this search and you go through this process of hiring the staff, and now we're going through the process of making sure the critical factors by position are filled out. As we get ready to go into an exciting time of the combine and the draft prep and free agency and all that stuff. But it's an exciting time, and the one thing about our process is going to be daily. It's going to be 24/7, 365. And like I say, Jerry's a great listener, man, and he asks great questions. And I think that's why the way we do it, we have a lot of success because it's very collaborative.
What are your critical factors?
Critical factors by position. So like for corners, what we're looking for in a corner, whether it's measurables, okay, but then things are going to be asked to do, traits. And so obviously we had that filled out on offense, and we had the same thing on defense last year, but they're going to be a little different. And so, how you talk about using a 4-eye or how you use outside linebacker and some of the pieces that we have in place, and then some of the areas that we need to, add through the course of free agency and the draft.
Kevin.
Christian, Kevin Sherrington, Dallas Morning News. Did Jerry promise you that the first 2 picks would be on defense?
No, he didn't.
Thank goodness.
Are you going to be campaigning for that?
Absolutely.
And did you bring any Eagles with you? Are you bringing any Eagles with you?
We'll see. I can't really speak about that. Worried about the guys that's on the roster right now.
Brad.
Brad Sham, Cowboys Radio, 105.3 The Fan. Welcome. As we watched the playoffs, it became apparent defense was much more pronounced as the playoffs unfolded. Do you think defense is something that builds through the course of the season, or can you be dominant all year? How do you think that works?
Yeah, I think you can. I think that definitely as the year goes on, you find your personality from your play style and your players and putting them in those situations. I think that, playoff football, especially, in the elements, that's when the real defenses definitely show up in January and February. But you definitely want to, try to approach the offseason and training camp in a way that you can start fast in terms of execution. That's most important in the fundamentals, because it doesn't matter what your scheme is if you don't do the little things the right way. So you have to start there, and then as you kind of get through the season, you continue to build on those foundational blocks. And then you should have a really good idea as the year goes and the roster is more consistent in terms of what you do and don't do well.
And the Philly hate being real. What did it feel like taking off the green and putting on the blue? And have you heard from any of your players there that said, man, why'd you have to go there?
Yeah. First they were just real excited for me to have this opportunity. Of course, they had mixed emotions about having to, see each other twice a year on different sidelines, but just excited and blessed for this, being here. I think, again, any team you talk to in a division, there's going to be some emotions about that, but it's all respect at the end of the day because, we're all trying to reach a common goal, and everybody has those individual aspirations to make that happen.
Did it feel weird putting on the blue?
It did, but that didn't last too long. Yeah.
Blake Elliott, 105 Fans for you, Coach Parker. If I did my research correctly, political science degree you finished with. How was that understanding of leadership and systems helped you be a better coach when you were in your other stops and continuing to be when you were going to be a defensive coordinator?
Yeah. I think, going to the University of Richmond, small school, small class size. Obviously, in the political science realm, a lot of the stuff is centered around the debate element or discussion. So when you have those conversations about different leaders in the past, whether it's, on the philosophy side or world leaders in different countries and figuring out different vantage points on why they did what they did, I think it definitely leads into the coaching world, whether it's, your Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and the whole, philosophical realm there with the principle of stoicism and things like that, or just, the art of war and that kind of, military strategy, all those type of things. You see those worlds blended a lot when you come to those different backgrounds. And so the books that I might be was supposed to read that I didn't, you kind of end up circling back to when you get into this.
And then for Coach Schottenheimer, who are some people that you lean on when you have questions? Everyone comes to you being the head coach. Who is somebody that when Coach Schottenheimer has a question, he goes to?
Oh, man, it's a good question. There's so many. It depends. Like A lot of times if it's personnel driven, John Schneider, out in Seattle, it's usually people that I've been, to battle with, and that care about me as a person, know me as a man, know what's important to me, because there's great advice, right? Everybody has great advice. People have been exposed to different things, but if they don't know where I'm coming from, then you lose the authenticity part of it. But just because we're into the personnel side of it right now, like John was the first name that popped in my mind because I just think he does a great job. Obviously, they just won the Super Bowl, but he's been doing it for a long time together. And he and I used to do pretend drafts, late at night, and it's cool to see the success that he's had.
Do you think there's any kind of negatives or could be problems with having such a young staff, and how do you overcome that with the staff?
No, I don't think so at all. I think, you're talking, I think 6 of the 9 guys we hired on defense have NFL experience. I think I go back to 2 things, energy and connection. I can see the excitement of our players. Marquise Bell was in today. DeMarvion Overshown came in yesterday. Like, the guys are excited. They're excited about Christian and the staff that we've put together. I think, again, we left no stone unturned in the search. A couple guys from college, a couple guys that have been coordinators before at different levels of football. And at the end of the day, man, if you can teach and motivate these guys and get them to know you care about them, these guys have shown they will run through a brick wall for you. And I think that's what we're going to get.
Christy Scales, Cowboys Radio 105.3. Christian, first of all, thank you. It's been 36 years of these press conferences, and now I have Marcus Aurelius and Seneca to put on my press conferce bingo.
I've never used that, Christy. Is that what you're saying? I've never used that? I use Ted Lasso and things like that. Way to go.
And he wouldn't talk about Seneca Wallace.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that one.
I've been waiting. I'm waiting for the Believe sign to go over there. Coach Lasso. And one thing that we hear often when there are changes on a coaching staff is coaching the coaches. The first part of this question, Brian, how long, because there were such different backgrounds offensively last year, how long did it take where you really thought everyone hit their stride in terms of coaching the coaches and being on the same page?
Are you talking about on offense? I feel like we had a good grasp of it going into the start of the offseason program, but I wouldn't say until after the OTAs we were totally aligned. I think that's important. You used a little bit of the break, during the time of the end of offseason program, OTAs end to training camp to make sure you kind of have it going. But there's constant communication. And again, I felt like we built a program on offense last year that will sustain. It's going to sustain our success, and it's going to sustain when you lose players to injuries and you're going with 4 new offensive linemen and things like that. But that only happens, Christy, through long nights, hard conversations, disagreements, arguments. That happens in our business, but you work through it. And it takes someone like a Clayton Adams, someone like a Christian Parker to work through those arguments and to get everybody aligned and going in the same direction. But it's a long task, and I think we've started. But like I said, we're just getting started. And the biggest piece we're in right now, they're getting ready to do playbook, but right now it's personnel driven.
And so the Christian, the part to you in juggling that and where you've got putting a playbook together, but also evaluations going into the draft. I mean, what are the immediate priorities in terms of the staff that you brought on board, but then all of the other things that are happening going into the draft?
For sure, I think that it definitely starts with the players. We want to be on the have a shared vision in terms of what we're looking for, what we're prioritizing. Different positions require different things. I think that the play style that we want to exhibit is crucial. So you want to find players that fit in that mold. And then as we move on, you kind of get into, the offensive language. What are we calling formations and passing concepts and route concepts? And what is our language for tackling and taking the ball away? And then front structures, coverages, the whole 9. You just kind of go through the whole process and take it piece by piece.
On the language, is that something where you use a lot that they've used already, or are you planning on introducing a lot of new?
I think you do both. I mean, right now there's not really, the players aren't here consistently to say what they've called different things. I mean, there's been 4 different defenses in the last 4 years, so there's not a lot of continuity relative to that. So I think it starts with, the staff just, we're in the room upstairs and we kind of start with the foundation of what we want to call things and make sure it's streamlined in a way that's easily digestible for the players. And then you build on that in different realms.
Were you getting any assurances by the Cowboys, Jones, Shotty, that there will be significant upgrades made on the roster for your defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that anytime you're trying to elevate and do things from year to year, you're always looking at the roster and how you can make it better. So I think that's pretty much a given wherever you're at.
Is your youth an advantage? I mean, Clowney was 33. I mean, do you see your youth as an advantage here?
I mean, I don't know. I've always been young, so I don't know. I don't know.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Ask us. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Not you, Brad. You're fine, Brad. You're good.
I don't know anything else. So yeah, I mean, I think the work ethic and schematic diversity in terms of who I've worked for and who I've been around and how I was raised, that has to be the advantage in the staff we've hired and the collaboration more so than maybe my age.
You started HBCU. Can you just talk about your journey? I mean, it seemed like it's been a meteoric rise from where you started to being a coordinator at this young age. Why? What's been the key for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, just, Latrell Scott hired me as a, 21-year-old coming out of the University of Richmond at Virginia State, being there for 2 years, wore a lot of hats there. Smaller staff size, so you kind of had to be a, do-it-all type of guy. Same thing at Norfolk State and throughout my career. I think that coming from that foundation and having, number one, the alumni base and being so passionate. I mean, you know how homecomings and everything are, and players that just want to play. They want to play football. They want to get a degree. They do it for the right reasons. But I think the people I was around, the players I had the opportunity to coach at those times was crucial in my development, being so young and figuring it out myself. There were some mistakes made along the way that maybe the spotlight wasn't on that I'm glad I, got out of my system back then. But yeah, I'm very grateful for where I started and where I'm continuing to go.
Yeah.
Do you see this as a quick rebuild with the core pieces that you have in place and all the offseason strategies that you guys have in place, 2 first-round picks, free agency, things like that?
Yeah, I don't think we want to put any expectations on it in that regard. I think we just want to kind of take it day by day and do it the right way. So we're kind of just taking that approach. And we'll get our head out of the sand at some point, but right now we got tunnel vision on building things the right way.
And then you've had pretty talented nickels at most of your spots in the NFL. How important is that piece to you?
Very important. Yeah, very important. That guy, he's a corner sometimes, he's a safety sometimes, he's a backer sometimes, he's a defensive end when he's blitzing. You want to have a guy who has natural instincts and ability to feel the game and play football. He's usually a guy who, if you were playing football on a Saturday afternoon in the neighborhood, he's your first-round draft pick, just because he feels the game naturally. So that's definitely an important dynamic of the defense.
Jane.
Coach, given the excitement of this hire, I couldn't help but notice that Jerry and Steven aren't here. Was that intentional?
You'd have to ask them. I know how excited they are, from the time that, we started this process. When Christian started Zoom, right, like we were tired. We'd done 8 Zooms in a couple days, right? And like I said, you're going through it and you're like, hey, I got grit, right, tattooed on. You got to stay in this thing. But the more he talked, like the more excitement it was. And, so the fact that they're not here doesn't mean anything. I know how excited they are. And from the time that we talked to him on Zoom to the time that we brought him in and met with him face to face, I think there was one part of the interview he didn't really like. We had him do a mock team meeting. He didn't really like that very much. He can maybe speak to that. But the excitement's real, and it's from top to bottom. It's from Jerry down to the staff and the guys that he's going to be looking over on the defensive staff are really excited.
Perhaps I'll be more direct. Is this, for all of us that are looking at this is a little different. Is that intentional in the sense that he wants to make this, give you a little bit more of the reins?
I don't think so. No, Jerry's very involved. You guys know that. But at the end of the day, this was a great hire for the Cowboys. We were all involved in it, and I wouldn't read too much the fact that he's not here.
I don't believe Jerry was here for this the last 2 times. Yeah.
All I'm saying is, given last year, I know that was a frustrating part of the team. I would assume that he'd want to be here for that. So.
Kevin.
Your former boss, Vic Fangio, once claimed that he had the secret to stopping the Cowboys. I wanted to know what you learned from him, and did he give you that secret?
He didn't tell us that in the interview.
From 2021, when we were in Denver, came here. Yeah. That was the completely different teams, completely different play callers. Everything was different. So, no, I think, I don't think that you've read too much into that. That wasn't team specific.
What did you learn from him as a defensive coach?
I don't know if we have enough time for me to explain all that, to be honest with you. I mean, he just foundationally what he believes in, how he coaches, his consistency and his approach. He's done this for so long, but he's always evolved. He's always a step ahead. He studies everything around the league in the offseason. He coaches the coaches, but he also gives you the latitude to be responsible for your area. And he just, he's great. I've learned so much from him. I don't know if we have enough time for me to really get into all that, but he's significantly changed my career.
Scott.
Christian, are you a sideline guy or booth guy? Is there a philosophy behind whichever that'll be?
We've discussed that. I think we'll try some different methods. So I don't want to commit to anything in that regard.
Todd.
Shotty's talked about the Zooms that you've had. What was your impression of the Zooms, and were you trying to ask them as many questions as they were asking you as well, just to get your feel for what it is here?
Yeah, you could definitely tell it was a very involved and thorough process when we started it. That being the first step and kind of learning everybody and you learning the people that were on the other side of a call. I know sometimes it can feel a little weird because, you're just talking into the computer screen like that. But, you want the engagement. So, everybody's cameras were on. You had good eye contact. There was good dialogue back and forth. There were definitely questions asked in both directions. But you could definitely tell how thorough and aligned everybody was in the process.
And then when you got here for the in-person, what can you kind of take us in the room and what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, started off, did install, so, kind of had to go through, some schematic things and watching some film to detail that out. There were different people in the room for that. Then when you kind of get into the personnel side of things and kind of talking about players around the league, players on the roster here, players on the roster other places, and kind of how those things fit the mold of what you want to try to build and do, to then talking to, ownership in terms of the philosophy and vision that you have, and for current players and what you've done in certain areas that kind of can speak to the diversity and schematic expertise that you want to bring in leadership foundationally, to, doing the mock position meeting like he referenced, where they kind of just throw you to the wolves, tell you get in front of the room, and it's the first Monday of OTAs, and speak to us like we're the players, and just, kind of be able to do that on the fly. To talking about third down pressures and watching an explosive reel to kind of talk about corrections you can make there, to just having a one-on-one conversation, just make sure that philosophical alignment is there with technique and fundamentals and situational awareness. I mean, you touch it all. It was a long day, but it was a very worthwhile one.
And when you walked out, did you think I nailed it? Like, I got it, I did everything I wanted to do?
Yeah, I did. I felt I left, I was going back to the airport. I didn't feel like I had any regrets with how I handled the process.
John.
Shotty, you mentioned that players have been excited about the hire and you've had some interactions with them. Can you kind of peel back the curtain there a little bit and maybe what some of those conversations and that excitement has been like from the player level?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, before I even get into that, I think, when you go through a process like this, right, it's not just about the interactions. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, everyone involved called about Christian. And so you couldn't find anybody to say anything bad about CP, and even going to the people in Philadelphia, that we talked to, which we did, and they were like, man, we don't want to lose him, especially to you guys, but he's the best and all that stuff. And then, once the decision was made, whether it's Kenny Clark, who he had been around, or, Demo, guys that have been around the game, Quinnen Williams, and then he jumped on the phone with them quick too, because that's part of the deal, right? When you take a position like this, you have to reach out to the guys that carry the message for you, and it really is the players. And my point to bringing it up was how many guys have gone out of their way to come in town, come up and say hello. And that speaks volumes, because a lot of these guys are spread out all over the country dealing with different things, and there's definitely been a excitement brewing. And after they get a chance to visit with them, I get a chance to debrief them, and they're very excited.
To follow up on that, Christian, for these guys to kind of reach out to you and to kind of have that interaction already, I mean, what is the importance and the value in that, in establishing those relationships from the get-go? Yeah,
I mean, that's where it starts. That's the foundation of any type of successful operation, is the relationships and the trust, the alignment. So starting that process now, being able to kind of get to know the man first, mutually, and there's some football discussions that coincide with that as well. But just getting to build that relationship. Some guys you have prior relationships with. Some guys, you talked to at the combine 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Some guys they might have had a teammate that I've been around before too. So you have a common link. I think that's extremely important, the relationships that you build to create that foundation as we kind of start moving forward with everything else.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.